Here I am back inside Erica, and today we're going to talk money, what it cost us to buy Erica and to convert her into a fully functioning camper van. I'm going to try and get on to the actual numbers quite early on for those people who are only interested in the headline numbers. I'll then go into detail of the different categories of budget and what we spent in each. But before that, I thought what I'd do is just mention a little bit of the background about how we came to be building a camper van in the first place. Our car was a very basic model. It was really knocking on a bit, and we decided we needed a new car. And it seemed that if we could achieve having a car with a bed in the back and a kitchen within the budget, then that would be a nice thing to have. So we started looking around to see if we could get a camper van for our budget of £10,000, and the answer was that yes we could, but it would be old and it would be high mileage, and I did not find a single one that met all of our requirements, which included having a solar panel, having a heater, having a permanent toilet and being under 2 metres high. So I started looking at what it would cost to buy a vehicle and to convert it. The first costing I came up with involved fitting a pop top and having a fridge. Those were the really fundamental two differences, and that budget came in at £6,500, and that clearly wasn't going to leave us enough to buy the level of base vehicle that we wanted. So I came up with a second costing, and this time omitted the pop top, and that costing came in at a little bit under £4,000. That was looking more achievable, but we thought, well, what if we don't have a fridge? Because as I discussed in the van tour video, we decided actually for short trips we really can quite happily live without a fridge and just take a cool box with us. So I cut back on the fridge, which in turn cut back on the size of electrical system we needed and lowered the spec we needed within that electrical system, and that gave me a bottom-up costing of £2,514. We then had to find ourselves a vehicle, and we bought Erica at auction, sight unseen, so it was a bit of a risk, and she is a Peugeot Expert TP. She's got a 2-litre diesel engine, and she is the comfort model, which is the lower of the TP models, and she's the L1 length, which is the shorter of the two lengths. We bought her, as I say, at auction, including all of the auction house fees, the broker fee, the delivery fee. With everything, she came in at almost on the nose £6,500. So given our overall top end budget of £10,000, we theoretically had £3,500 to fit her out. However, we also had our bottom up costing of £2,500, so that's what we were shooting for. So what did she actually cost? She cost £2,027.87. So we came in at almost £500 under budget. Now there's a couple of key points that I need to mention here. One is that we reused quite a few items that we had just knocking around the house, which saved us quite a bit of money. Just to reel off a few examples, the insulation that went in the floor, we just happened to have a whole roll of closed cell foam insulation sitting in the loft, given it a few years ago. And it was ideal for our purpose. That cost us nothing. We had in the shed, back from a purchase in 2002 when we did camping trips, we had 2 camping gas cylinders. To my recollection, in 2002 they cost us £45 each. So again, not an inconsiderable saving. We also had a regulator. And then there was the futon. We had the wood left from a futon that we tried to give away a couple of years ago. No takers. We tried to give the wood away as firewood. No takers. And I just couldn't bring myself to throw away some decent quality wood. So we ended up using all of it in Erica. Most of the sofa bed that I am sitting on now was built using the futon timber. And I actually also reused every single one of the screws that came out of that futon. But talking of screws, it also didn't cost us very much for screws for this build, because I have an enormous collection of screws. I always keep screws in stock, so I don't consider those to be a project by project item. I had magnetic catches from a previous project where I'd bought a whole bag wholesale for the same price as a couple bought retail, so I was able to reuse those. And I'm making it sound like we have an enormous house with a massive garage just stuffed full of stuff. whereas we actually live in a small house with a small shed. The other rider on the fact that this only cost us £2,000 is that I already had all of the tools we needed, bar a few minor things, to complete this build. And of the few things I did buy, for example, I bought a large set square part way through the build, which you may have seen in the kitchen video. Those are things that I know will be used at length on other projects in the future, and therefore I've not costed them against this project, and they are just a capital purchase. And of course, if you were to need to buy all the tools, that will cost some considerable amount of money. Although, as I did mention in one of the earlier videos, pretty well all of my tools are, apart from my DeWalt cordless drill, they're all unbranded cheap tools that have been going for, in some cases, a couple of decades, and have done a lot of work and have proved their value time and time over. So, just to recap, we had a purchase of £6,500 for the vehicle. We spent £2,030 on the build. So Erica in total cost us £6,530 to give what I think is rather a nice looking, very functional camper van. And what I'm going to do now is just go through all the individual categories within the budget and say what the budget was and how much we actually spent. And I also feel I should apologise. Every time I look over there, the contrast goes a bit odd. I drove out here to get a nice backdrop, which is actually bleached until I move my head or lift my coffee cup, and then suddenly the background, the contrast changes. Bit annoying. Hope that doesn't mean I'm going to have to re-record this whole thing somewhere else. So I'm going to go through all the categories alphabetically, and we will start with a category where I was rather negligent, because adhesives, I did not include a single penny for adhesives, and we spent £64 on adhesives, and that doesn't even include the wall carpet adhesive, because that came with the carpet that I bought. So just for other adhesives we spent £64. Do not underestimate how many adhesives you need. The wall carpet, including the adhesives for that purpose, I budgeted £50. It came in over budget at £63, but actually that's misleading. The wall carpet itself came in under budget, but because of the nasties within the high temperature adhesive, we decided it was worth buying some slightly better PPE and bought a respirator style face mask for that job, and it was that pushed us over budget. The electrics, I've edited out a few minutes of me wittering about electrics. The headline is we spent £413 against a budget of £597, and the main reason for the underspend was not putting in a mains charger. For more detail, you can pause and read this slide. Floor covering, Erica still doesn't have a carpet on her floor. However, I have now ordered it, and rather than just spending £10 on a piece of lino, I've bought some Flotex flooring. Which doesn't come cheap. At the local carpet shop it's £45 a square metre. I got a roll end and has come in at £42 against a budget of £40. The heater I costed at £250. Now, at the time that I was looking at heaters, we decided by the time I did the low end budget that it was going to be a Chinese diesel heater, and I could see that some were a lot more expensive than others and didn't know if there was any merit in spending more. By the time I came around to buying, I decided there was no merit in buying one of the ones that was advertised at a higher price, so I only spent £98 on the heater. However, there was also the turret mount, the hole saw, the heatproof sealant and the jerry can that all added on top to bring us to just under £150. Hinges and catches. I didn't price the furniture separately because that all came under timber, but the hinges and catches, quite incredibly, I had allowed £70. And that was mainly because I'd costed 10 hinges at £40. And that wasn't just a finger in the air, that was a genuine, I did a search and that's what they were coming in at. And even at the time, I put a note that I'm sure we can get these cheaper, and we most certainly did. So rather than spending £4 per hinge, I actually went to Screwfix and paid 29p per hinge for some flush hinges. So rather than spending the budget of £70, that came in at half the budget at £35. Insulation I allowed £106, but as I've already mentioned, we used in the floor some closed cell foam that we already had, and we also didn't need as much for bubble wrap as I'd anticipated, and therefore against a budget of £106 we spent £89. The lights I allowed £50, and that was pretty accurate, we spent £46. The toilet I costed at £50, and had I bought at the time that I did the costing, then it would have come in at £50. However, that offer had gone by the time I came to buy, so against a costing of £50 we ended up spending £63 on the toilet. Miscellaneous is a little bit of an odd category, and that's because it ended up with more money in than we started, because everything that we sold out of Erica went into there. I say everything. All we've sold to date is the 4 rear seats, and some people ask £100 or £150 for those. We sold them for £25 just because we wanted them out of the house, but that £25 that we recouped went back into that budget. We will also at some point sell the wheelchair winch, which will hopefully bring in some more money, but at the moment we still have that. And things that went into miscellaneous just really didn't belong anywhere else. So the Erica's radio didn't have an auxiliary socket, and we bought the connector needed for the auxiliary socket. That went into there, just some little bits and pieces. Screws, as I mentioned, I already keep a huge stock of screws, and the only screws that we bought specifically for Erica were the self-drilling, self-tapping screws that we used to affix the floor and the kitchen to the wall, and they came in at £2.99. I did also actually buy at one point some 1.5 inch screws. I found it inconceivable that I'd run out of 1.5 inch screws, but I couldn't find any. So I bought some, but I then found the 1200 that I did in fact already have in stock. I keep a large stock of screws. I don't usually have 1200. That was an incident of, it was cheaper for me to buy a box of 1,000 screws to get free postage many years ago than it was to pay a postage charge. Hence I ended up with a massive box of 1.5 inch screws. The sink and hob, costed it at £315, spent £320. I costed it based on buying a kit, but when I wanted to buy, nobody had the kit in stock, so I had to buy all of the items individually. So that's not just the sink and hob in that category. It's the water and waste container, it's the pipe running between those, it's the water pump, all the connectors, all the clips, the copper gas pipe, the flexible gas hose. All of that went into that category, so not bad that we were only £5 over budget. The solar, I've only included in here the solar panel and the solar entry gland. Everything else related to the solar system is in the electrics category. Fortunately, I priced a reasonably high priced solar panel in this, a rigid solar panel, before doing much research on whether it was worth spending the extra. And I'm glad I did, because the first solar panel we bought, which was a rigid one, if you go back to our solar panel install, you'll see the whole story about how we got through 3 solar panels before we fitted one. The original solar panel was only £80, but I sent that one back. Ordered a flexible one, which was 140, I think. Sent that one back. Ordered the reinforced semi-flexible, and by then we were up to £200 for the solar panel. Add in the cable entry gland, and we were up to £210 against that £222 costing. Incidentally, it didn't cost me anything to send back the first 2 panels, which was lucky, but more about sending things back later. A table, we'd costed £40 for a table, but when the DVLA changed their rules, so there was no chance of us being able to register Erica as a motor caravan, it seemed pointless to put a table in such a small vehicle. We didn't need one, so that saved us £40. Timber. I was a bit naive on the timber. I priced up some fancy furniture board and some boarding for the walls and floors, but didn't price up anything for, you know, some 2x4s and stuff like that and battens. But as it turned out, we didn't need any wood for the ceiling because we refitted the header liner. We didn't need any wood panelling for the walls because we refitted the original panel cards. So the only wood we used was for the floor and for the furniture. And we didn't buy the fancy furniture board. Instead, we just bought plywood, just in case we did it really badly and we didn't want to ruin an expensive piece of wood. But actually the plywood finish turned out perfectly nice, so we've kept it. So we had a budget of £222 on timber and we spent £136. As I mentioned at the outset, we did reuse a lot of wood from the futon, but I'd always intended that to be the case. So that's actually probably why I didn't price any battens, etc., because I thought there'd be enough wood in the futon, which there wasn't. Upholstery, I allowed £304, we spent £109. Most of that saving is because I priced up a much larger piece of foam for the bed and the sofa than we needed. It transpired it was much better value to just buy a piece of cut to size foam, or two pieces of cut to size foam, which saved us over £100. And then there's the fact that this fabric you see here and up there is entirely a pair of £6 charity shop curtains. I described that a few videos back, and at the time I really wasn't wild about this fabric and said that it's not what I would have chosen, but it's grown on me. I don't mind it. So for the time being that is staying. I've gone slightly out of order here and missed out the seat swivel. The seat swivel we allowed £160 and we spent £195, but that is because I hadn't anticipated that we would also need to buy the seat, and it was an absolute bargain that the seat only cost us £40. Even though it's not in great condition, it still was a bargain. So we went £35 over budget, but well worth that money. The kitchen work surface, I'd allowed £16. It came in at twice that, and the reason is that in costing this, I costed the exact wood we bought, which is pine furniture board. I completely misjudged how big a kitchen we would want, so we needed a piece twice the size that I'd originally costed. Tools, as I already mentioned, we already had all the tools we needed for this project, bar a few items that we bought along the way, most of which we arguably could have managed without, and there were a few saw blades. Although hole saws I have mainly included within the category that they fell in, so the hole saw for the heater is included in the heater category. So I budgeted nothing for tools, and things that I have attributed to this project came in at £21. And we finish with the painful category, and that is unnecessary. I didn't budget anything for unnecessary, and unnecessary came in at just under £60. That is in part postage to send back things that I bought in error. For example, the tap that didn't fit the sink, sent that back, bought again. So return postage is included in here. Then there's the brackets for the rigid solar panel. Because we didn't fit a rigid solar panel, we didn't need them, but we'd scratched them in originally trying them out with the panel, so I felt like we couldn't really send those back. And then there were other things we bought that I've included them in unnecessary because for this build they are, and I've charged them to this build. But actually we could have sent back, taken back, but we've kept because we know that we will actually use them in the future. They will have a use. So as I say, costed nothing within the budget, but that came at just under £60. That is a little bit painful. So all that adds up to the £2,030 that we spent. Yep, £2,030 against a budget of £2,514. And I am delighted with that result because, you know, looking around me here, this is a nice camper van that is very practical, and I am happy with what we have achieved here. So I hope some of that has been of interest to somebody, particularly if you're looking at converting a small van. If you've already got the tools and you've got a few things knocking around your house, then I think you can get a pretty good result for £2,000. You can obviously spend a lot less, you can spend a lot more, but that is how much it cost us. So that really wraps up this series, and I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope some of you have got something useful out of it. And we hope to have lots of successful trips in what we have built here. I should have also mentioned in the upholstery category, the curtains came into upholstery. These metal poles at the back, we already had lying around the house. All of the fabric were remnants from previous things, so the fabric cost us nothing. They are suspended on cable ties as curtain rings, so that cost us nothing. The only thing that it cost to put curtains up in here was these are suspended with some really strong magnets, and I needed 2 extra magnets. I only had 2, and so those cost us something. And the front curtains I've used wooden dowel as the curtain poles. But other than that, the curtains cost us nothing, and you know, they look reasonably jolly, I think. The buttons are all out of an old button collection. I'm probably wittering on too much about curtains.